What's the difference between releasing a book on Wattpad versus Amazon?
Yeah, so I think one of the key differences is that generally on Wattpad you're releasing episodically. So a lot of people call it serial fiction, where you're releasing, in a series. It's often one chapter at a time or a couple chapters at a time, and you're kind of building an audience in the same way that you would a TV show or a podcast, basically where they are coming back for more, week after week sort of thing. And there's a little more flexibility, like generally on Wattpad, unless you are specifically part of their paid programs, it's free, and so it's, they don't pay to read and you don't pay to post. It's just like a social media sort of thing. Wattpad does have their creators program and their paid program. I think it's now Wattpad Originals is what they're calling it now, where there is you do get paid for your reads and your work, but there's more of a readership that's not necessarily paying, or if they are paying, they're not necessarily paying as much as they would be on something like Amazon. So they're both a little more forgiving of if you have mistakes, if it's imperfect sort of thing, and also a little less discerning. They will abandon your book happily. They're like, well, I didn't really pay for this, so if I'm 2 chapters in and I don't like it, I'm gone. And that's if they make it 2 chapters in sort of thing. So there's a lot of, very quick decision making that's happening with the readers. And then, Amazon, on the other hand, you post the full book and you can kind of decide how much you're earning unless you're using a third party, like a publisher or something like that. But you have more say over what it is you're making and what those rates are. But it's also a very specific audience of people who are, either willing to pay for your content, or they are more avid readers who are part of Kindle Unlimited or something like that, where they're not necessarily paying for your content specifically, but they are paying for access to content like yours. And if they access your content, you will get paid for that.
Why did you pick Wattpad?
I think initially I wasn't really looking to make this more of a career. It was kind of like a hobby, and it was something that I wanted to try and put out there. And I saw that a lot of people were putting stuff out there on this platform and doing interesting work. And I was like, oh, I want to be a part of this community. I want to, be able to engage with people. But I was kind of like, nobody's going to read it. Like, nobody's going to read my stuff, right? Like, that would be crazy. And I thought, like, oh, if I get anyone to read it, it'll be kind of fun. And then, hey, I'll have a written book when I'm done, and maybe I'll try to publish it, or maybe I'll try to do something else. It was very low key, very just kind of see where it goes sort of thing. And I was very lucky that my first book blew up and my subsequent books have done very well. And I think my first book has 2.5 million reads now, wow, which is just like,
it's awesome.
Wild to me, because I was thinking like, oh, if one person reads my book, that would be really cool. But I started realizing that, Wattpad, they have a lot of opportunities. They have a lot of connections. They have a studio arm. They have their own publishing arm. They have a lot of ways for authors to make money, to connect with people in their field, and to kind of advance their careers in various ways. And they reached out to me, and I was like, oh, I'd love to, work with your program. And I started out working with their STARS program, and things just kind of started moving, and there was just interest that I didn't think there was going to be. And it was kind of more just like the opportunities came to me. And I think that there's so many pros and cons with all the different platforms and the different ways you can publish and market your books these days. And for me, I think one of the core things that I just love about Wattpad is that community, is the fact that these people, that are reading my book will interact with me, and they will, one of the cool things Wattpad has is inline comments, which means that they can comment on each paragraph separately. So if they have something they really want to say about this line, they will like, I love this line, or I love that he said this, or this is so funny, or, you know, there are also plenty of people like, oh, I hate this bad guy, he's the worst, you know, and railing against, you know, whatever character, and, you know, luckily the villain, the one I intended them to hate, but there's so much interesting feedback and communication with other people, and people reaching out to me, telling me that like I've affected them in some way, or that, you know, I get a lot of messages from people who are also chronically ill. My first book features a chronically ill character, and I just kind of did that because I hadn't seen anyone that felt like me in these books. You know, I saw a lot of healthy, you know, young women who were like, oh, they're, you know, beautiful and everyone wants them. And I'm like, well, can't they want the unhealthy young woman? You know, like maybe there's something to be said there. And when I did write her, I got so many, you know, personal messages saying like that made me feel really valued, and it made me feel like someone can find me attractive, and someone can, you know, see value in me as a partner beyond, you know, just, you know, that I'm healthy or that I look a certain way, that, you know, she was still, you know, capable, and she still did things, and, you know, he was still in love with her, and she didn't have to be, you know, healthy all the time or tough. And a lot of people have said, oh, I love that you didn't cure her, right? And it was something I explicitly set out to do, because so many stories about people who are sick, they get magically cured and it's all better. And like, yeah, that's nice. And like, I get it. We don't like to, you know, think about sickness. It's one of those things that can kind of bring you down and bring you back into the real world. But I think when you are always telling stories about sick people where they get better at the end, it tells you that, you know, that there's some sort of failure if they don't. That there's some sort of loss to be had if they are, you know, not perfectly better at the end, if they are not fixed, you know, that there is some sort of unresolved thing. And for people who are chronically ill, it is unresolved, and it will be unresolved. And there was certainly some feedback like, oh, I didn't like that was unresolved. I wanted it to be solved. And I get that. I would love my chronic illnesses to be solved. That would be great. But there was much more feedback from people in the chronically ill community that were saying, I love that, because for once it wasn't about fixing her. She was okay the way she was. And, you know, it wasn't about trying to solve her. She just had an adventure and was also sick. And you can be both, and that's okay. And having those interactions with fans, and, you know, people telling me like, oh, that meant something to me, that, you know, I'm chronically ill, or my loved one is chronically ill, and I felt seen with that. That was just like, that is exactly why I put my stuff out there, is for those interactions. And that's something that I think is really unique to Wattpad, that level of communication with the individuals reading your book, and them being able to say that kind of thing.
What does it mean to be an official Wattpad creator?
Yeah, so Wattpad has their Wattpad Creators program. A while ago, they had something similar that was Wattpad Stars, and they changed it a few years ago to Creators, which is a slightly different program. But it's basically, they select people that have had kind of the right combination of, you know, good readership and community building and relationships with their readers, and people that they feel like, you know, are kind of both good community members and good writers, and they can contribute more in some way, whether it's, you know, through writing paid stories, or they have, you know, various affiliate programs and things like that. So they will reach out to you if they kind of scout you. And I don't know too much about their process, because I think it's, you know, very, very secretive. But in general, it's those kind of select authors that they want to invest more time in. And
is it a requirement that you produce a certain amount per month?
It depends on your contract. I know with my contract, the answer is yes, or was yes during a large portion of my contract. And it's like a weekly requirement, but it depends on, I think, the individual and what contract they've signed and what their particular agreement is.
And how is that to go from loving writing and reading, but then now something that you just thought, oh, I want to try this, and then you found people resonated with it. Now there's a requirement to show up for them. What's the pressure like with that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like the pressure from, like, oh, I have a contract, I have to do, I've agreed to do a certain thing. That's kind of low for me. I'm good with deadlines. I can do that sort of thing. The pressure from fans, I feel like, is like way more intense for me because I want to make these people happy. They're supportive of me. They're, incredibly kind to me, and they love my reading, and they're so invested in what I do. And so, I will post something, and then within the first 10 minutes, someone will say, I want the next chapter. And it's like, I just posted like, I'm not that fast sort of thing. But it's kind of, a blessing and a curse because, I do feel like, oh man, I wish I could produce more. There's always a lot of people asking for more, asking, can you post twice a week? Can you post, 3 times a week? Can you post twice just this week? Sort of thing. And I do my best to accommodate it because I very much appreciate the investment that my fans have given me. And they, there are a lot of people who they started reading my work when I had nobody reading it and nobody was paying attention to me, and they took a chance on somebody who had no reads and, commented and encouraged me. And I do not forget those people. I remember every single one of them. And when people are, so happy about my work and so invested in it, and they're saying nice things, but they're also, there will be weeks when I'm like, oh man, you guys, I'm really sick. I can't post this week. I'm sorry, I will make it up to you. I'll solve it later, sort of thing. And they will always be like, you take care of you, you get better, we're here for you, sort of thing. It is such a welcoming, kind community that I just not necessarily feel indebted to them, but I want to make them happy. I want to bring them things that they enjoy. And people will tell me oh, this is what I look forward to all week, and it makes my day better when you post. And I want to be that for people. And so I think that it's a real pressure, but it's also a good pressure in a way, because the fact that I am affecting other people's lives and making them happy, and I'm able to do that for someone I don't know, or someone across the world who has never met me. It's so much power that I don't take for granted.
Are you writing a new chapter each week and then releasing it?
So yes and no. I would say the chapter that I'm releasing every week is not the chapter that I wrote that past week. I try to have at least some kind of buffer. My ideal goal is at least 10 chapters, but sometimes they gets a little shorter and I'm like, oh no, I gotta keep up, sort of thing. But that's in part because I am always kind of tweaking the last few chapters. So I like to have a little buffer in case I want to go back and change something, or, if I realize, oh, I didn't quite set this up in the previous chapters, I want to make sure that that's in there so that they understand when I bring it up here what it means, or that sort of thing. So I like to have that editing room before, even though it is still a working draft, it's one that people are seeing. So I like to have at least the story points really solidified so that I can feel okay, I can post that and not need to worry that people who read that and are going to be moving forward are going to be missing something that I have to go back and add later. But those chapters, the one that I'm posting, this week it will be a chapter that I wrote many weeks back, but may have edited up until the last week or so.
How does feedback affect what you write?
I have always been really grateful for feedback, any feedback. I think it's easy to get very sensitive about feedback when you're making something personal and you're really proud of what you're doing and you're making something great and someone says, oh, I don't like this, or even, oh, what if you did this differently, or maybe I want this sort of thing. There's that kind of knee-jerk instinct to want to say like, no, it's great, I like it. But I have really learned to value all feedback. And I go out of my way to acknowledge and take seriously all feedback. And I will look at it and I will think about it and I will go, oh, they said to change this. And I don't change everything that people suggest I change. But there are times when someone will suggest something and I love that suggestion and it's a great idea and it adds value, and it's another set of eyes on something I'm creating and they have good ideas. And so if someone is saying, oh, I wish they had done this, or I wish they had done this, I go, should they have done that? And I will try to take it seriously, even if it's coming from a place where I feel like no, like I had a reason for doing that. And then I will always engage with these people. And, if they say, oh, I don't like this character, I think they're being a jerk. Like someone said that in one of these chapters from my first book the other day. And I thought to myself, you know what? I keep thinking that he comes off like more of a jerk in this chapter than I intended for him to come off as. And I basically said that. And I said, every once in a while, I think about this chapter specifically and how he comes off more of a jerk than I meant. And when you see like his side, I also wrote as a like bonus chapter, his side of this particular one, it makes sense. But if you don't know what his side is, and readers don't know that until if they were to read that bonus chapter, he does come off as kind of more of a jerk than I meant. I'm like, I might have to change it at some point. That's a good tip. He's not that much of a jerk, I promise. But then there are also things where someone will say, oh, why didn't they do this? And sometimes I have a reason. It's like, oh, I actually thought about that. This is the reason why they wouldn't do that. And it starts a good discussion. Or in a couple instances, people have like said, I don't get it. Right? Like, I don't get it. Who is this person? What did they do? Where was this information? And that can be really useful because I can only see my writing through my perspective. So of course I get it. I wrote it. It's very easy for me to acknowledge, all those little details and understand all those little details because I have thought way too much about it. But the reader hasn't necessarily done that, or they don't necessarily have, the background I have. So maybe they didn't watch the show I'm referring to, or maybe, I only mentioned this person once and they haven't come up in a while and they forgot who they are. And I know who they are, but they don't know. And so when they point out like, oh, I'm confused, this doesn't make sense to me, that's great for me because then I can go, okay, what about it doesn't make sense? What's missing here? And when I can put in those extra details and explain to, the readers who don't get it and have that conversation with them, a lot of times that will make my work stronger and easier, on a comprehension level, so that people don't get lost and give up and go like, I'm lost. Who is this person? I don't know what's going on anymore. I'm just going to abandon the book. I can go, oh, like where are you getting lost? And let me help you get back on track. And then your insight can help me, create a more comprehensible book. And so I think it's great to have feedback, and it's not that you don't have to take all the feedback, but it's always worth asking yourself what you can do about it and if you should. And that's what I try to do with any feedback that's given to me is, what can I do from this? What can I learn from it? And is it something that I did intentionally, or did I make a mistake? Is there something I could do better? And a lot of times these things are, good thoughts, or at least good insight to have into what the reader's mind is and what they're thinking about your story and whether or not it's working.
Can you be a Wattpad creator and still be on Amazon?
Yeah. I think my understanding is that everyone kind of has their own specific deal with, what they have coordinated with Wattpad. And it depends on, the book and what they've worked out. But there are many Wattpad creators who, they have some books on Wattpad, some books on Amazon. Some people have them on both. I think it just depends on the specifics of your agreement with Wattpad.
You have millions of views on Wattpad. How does this happen?
I ask myself that a lot. I think that I've just connected with something that people were looking for. I think it kind of came on all at once. It was, once I finished my book and I kind of marked it as complete, there was this kind of steady stream that just kept going up and just kept being more and more interest, and it just was kind of exponential, and it really caught me by surprise because, like I said, I was kind of like, oh, if one person reads my book, that will be nice. And I think what it came down to was that, I was trying to create something because I hadn't seen it, and I wanted to. I wanted to see a chronically ill protagonist. I wanted to see, someone do something with the Greek myth Sirens. And, I wanted to see how those things would play out, and I hadn't seen anyone else doing them. And I think in doing so, I found the same gap that a lot of people had. A lot of people were interested in this and couldn't find it. And so I think in making something that I wanted to see and I wanted myself and I saw a lack of, it resonated with so many other people. And there's obviously always going to be some element of luck when it comes to virality and, what people pick up on and really, really love. But I was very lucky that I think I hit on both a topic and multiple topics that people were interested in, and also, good timing and a bit of luck.
And so it wasn't just where, here, let me create something that I know is popular right now. It was something that you really felt personal about. You wanted to see it. You wanted to be a reader of it. Yeah,
I had just kind of really started reading romance, started reading, a lot of these paranormal books, and thinking, I wonder why they haven't done, a lot of incubi, and they haven't done sirens, and they haven't done some of these other interesting creatures, because there's so many things beyond vampires and werewolves. Not that I don't love a good vampire and werewolf story, but I was wondering what else is out there, what else, why aren't they doing these other things? Because I want to see them and I'm interested in them. And then I, at several points would be reading and thinking man, I just don't relate to this main character in this story because they're off doing all these cool and exciting things. And I'm like, oh, it's hard to get out of bed sometimes. And, this doesn't, feel like me. And it got me thinking, how many people are thinking, oh, I am not, good enough, or I am not the love interest. I am not someone falls in love with. I am, the sad, sick friend, or whatever minimal parts, the people were getting in these books. And it's I see these gaps and I think, I want those. I want to fill those gaps. I want something to exist in that space. And I think it was just something that I think maybe people didn't know that they wanted, but when they saw it, they went, oh, I want that. That's what I'm looking for. Kind of not necessarily having, knowing what needed to fill the gap, but knowing that there was a gap there. And when I was able to fill it, I think it just got a lot of good response.